So this is kind of my presentation on how the ethics in higher ed class has changed, not just my perception of ethics in higher education, but probably my perception of ethics in general. This is the first course in ethics that I've ever taken, and I found it super interesting and also kind of mentally and emotionally challenging. I had to synthesize thoughts that I feel like I had foundations to, that I kind of had to reanalyze, re-synthesize, and realize where are my foundations coming from and how does that impact the work that I do within my role in student affairs. So in, the first module, we were asked to, synthesize a situation where somebody lied to benefit somebody else. And my response to that was kind of, there's no reason to lie. And I think looking back on it now, I kind of considered ethics as a one size fits all. Honesty and integrity and responsibility all seem like things that are just always good to have and always good to use. And they seemed like I could just use that as a hard, fast line. But I realized that just like any other kind of ethical dilemma, there is no hard, fast line for reasoning. So every instance has to be a case by case basis, and all influences, stakeholders, and moral issues must be synthesized together. I think what really got me to see through this, there's never a good time to lie. Originally what I had said was the professor kind of challenged that and said, if you go to the door and somebody has a gun and they ask where your children are, you're not going to tell them where they are. You're going to lie. So there is an appropriate time for lying. And I think that ethics is part of that conversation. When is it appropriate? When is it best? And when is it not? I think I also suggested that my family and my upbringing and my cultural norms provided my ethical compass. And I think that has changed throughout the semester because it's not just about me, right? So I have cultural understandings from being a white female that my students, who are majority minority at a community college level, do not share. And so my culture and my cultural norms can't be the way that I decide how things should work. I think that this course has forced me and challenged me to use professional standards from NASPA and CAS, and then also legal standards that I may or may not have previously used before, as well as the mission and vision of the institution that I work with. I think all of those have to be a part of the ethical decision making that we use in our field. So, moving forward, the pathways through ethical decision making in higher ed as I see them now for myself. So, guiding ethical principles, I think the three that come up the most often are respect for others. And so in our role in higher ed, that means that, it's respecting all stakeholders. So that's students, fellow staff, the institution, the community that you live and work in, and then also the community kind of on a broader scale, so society in some way. Beneficence, and so this idea of doing good for all and seeking out opportunities that benefit all parties, just doing good, if I could put that in quotes. And at times this means making the really tough decisions for the right reasons. And in higher ed, those decisions come up constantly, and you're challenged to consider what is good. And I think that it's good to keep that in the back of your mind. What is good? Good for all. And then last one is justice. And in higher education, this means a million different things. So that means seeking out opportunities for access for all students. And I work at a community college, and so access is what we do. We're open door. Creating pathways to success without compromising content. So we want to be open door, but we also want to make sure that what we're offering, the product that a student receives, is of high rigor, high expectation, and where they're learning and they're able to compete in the job market. Working with government to ensure that resources are managed and dispersed in equitable ways. That can be very challenging and very ethically difficult sometimes in our work. And then also just being a good steward of the responsibility and authority that we're given in our professional roles. So whether that's with students or with parents or with the community. As a community college in a fairly large city, our community depends on us. We are a pipeline for employment. And so we need to be responsible with that kind of responsibility. So these are the 4 guiding questions that I use myself. One, is it good for the student? And the student can be one individual or a plethora of students? Two, is it good for the community? And like I said, when I consider community, I think of the city or town that I live in immediately, but also kind of society in general. Is it good for our community as Americans or our worldly community? Is it good for the institution? And I think that is a question that I previously, before this class, probably would not have put into this. So I'm glad that I've kind of come around that corner. And four, does it align with my personal value system? And so I kind of developed a diagram that I think represents my ethical decision making process. So it's a Venn diagram, of course, and the three that I'm trying to match up are my ethical and legal responsibility, my responsibility to the institution, and then also my responsibility to myself, so my personal morality and my personal values. So, between ethical and legal responsibility and personal morality and values, intentionally thinking through the impact of the institution. How does it relate to the mission and vision? That seems to be what I'm missing if I'm in kind of that quadrant over there. To the right, if I have legal responsibility checked off and I have responsibility to institution, how do I incorporate personal morality and values? And you find ways to incorporate those by analyzing your core mission and vision. So I myself have my own personal values that I need to make sure are upheld. And I think that that's where those questions from the previous slide would come in. Down below, the responsibility to institution and personal morality and values, when the two of those meet, but you're still lacking ethical and legal responsibility, you need to do research and find out what the legal standards are. What has people done with this in the past? What do professionals say about scenarios like this? And if you can find a professional standard to kind of base your understanding on, then that's even better. In the middle, when all of these line up, you are legally and ethically sound, it aligns with your own personal morality, and it assists with the mission and vision of the institution, then that's how you make a truly ethical decision. I think this course has taught me how to think through not just creating a system like this for myself, but also thinking through how to reach that middle section on a more consistent basis. Thank you.